All right, so I am actually going to talk a little bit about Nine Energy, who we are and how we've grown over the years. It's probably a similar story to what most of you have encountered if you work for an OFS company. As Sagan said, I'm the Vice President of IT and HR, and Victor, beginning of this year, we brought him over to lead all of our FieldFX implementations and manage the systems for us. So he actually has the difficult part of the presentation, talking about the technical configuration, how we have it set up in our environment. So with that being said, who is Nine Energy? We have two main divisions, our completions and then our production group. Completion is obviously wireline, cementing, coil tubing, and then production is going to be our workover and well maintenance divisions. We divided the business up like this last year after a merger that we had gone through that effectively doubled our size. This gives you kind of an idea of our geographic footprint. We're effectively in all the major plays. We have roughly 40 locations in North America with varying product lines. So this is our timeline of acquisitions. Our very first acquisition started back in 2011 with Northern States, or NSC. And over the next few years, we acquired TriPoint, IPS up in Canada, and then our Wireline division. Very shortly after, we merged all these companies and created the business entity of Nine Energy Service. After that, we went through a few more acquisitions. We have our pressure control division, our cementing division, another wireline group. In 2015, we acquired a technology company that's G8 Oil Tools. That's effectively our Scorpion plugs that we have. Latter part of 15 and 16, I think everybody in this room knows why there is no M&A during that time frame. But during the downturn, it did hit us very, very hard. If you look at head count, we went from about 1,300 employees at our peak to 486 at the bottom of the downturn. Very, very painful, but we were fortunate in that we maintain our footprint in all of the major shale plays. We didn't close any facilities. We were effectively just running skeleton crews. In doing that, that allowed us to actually bounce back very quickly. So a little over a year ago, we merged with Beckman Production, which was the combination of about 7 acquisitions that had occurred over the same timeline, roughly. The key differentiator between the businesses, obviously they were in a different type of work that they were focusing on, being in production and coil tubing. But Legacy Nine, we had done a lot in terms of integration of our various platforms, our network. So we had one global network. We had everybody's on the same email domain. Essentially, we had standardized technology across the board, but we had also done it with HR, DOT, HSE. So we were a very consolidated company that was working and functioning as one business entity with multiple business units within it. Beckman, on the other hand, was 7 small businesses that had done nothing in terms of integration. They effectively let those businesses run on their own throughout the downturn, which made it a little challenging to integrate them after the merger. We focused on effectively taking the smallest businesses first and then just rolling them into the fold. So all aspects of again, all the support functions, technology, HR, DOT. Now, all of our businesses are on one ERP system. We're rolling out FieldFX through, well, we have it implemented in our cementing division. We're rolling it out in the wireline division. So one of the things that became apparent a few years ago was that we were using antiquated processes, using paper, tickets everywhere, hand cramming stuff into Excel, manually building reports, all the pain points that probably most of you are going through. And we came to the realization that we would have to implement some sort of a system to streamline these processes and get control, get our arms around what was going on out at the field level, and be able to make more informed decisions about our business. So whenever we started looking at different systems, there's kind of some of the key things that we were looking for was making sure they would integrate with NetSuite. Obviously, NetSuite has a booth here. We have some NetSuite resources that we've worked with that are fantastic. So that integration piece was very important to us. Also having something that was very robust, flexible, scalable. Cloud-based is another piece that was important to me and important to Nine. Whenever I started at Nine 5 years ago, the CEO, the senior leadership had effectively said, don't invest a lot of capital into technology. They wanted to push everything to the operational expense. So we started off from the start with cloud-based platforms, which made it easy whenever we decided, okay, we need to look at a system that is cloud-based and will integrate with the rest of our platforms. Okay, we find something that's cloud-based and let's move forward. And then obviously there's another presentation earlier that was talking about how FieldFX is focused on oil field specific problems. That was going to be key for us. So Victor's going to come up and talk a little bit about this with me, but one of the things we do want to touch on before he dives into the details is giving a little bit of advice for new implementations. How many here have not implemented FieldFX yet? Okay, good, all right. So have y'all had a lot of excitement after seeing all of this stuff? Are y'all ready to go on it? I'm sure Sagan's ready for y'all to do it. Okay, so first and foremost, get buy-in and support from top-line management. I think it goes without saying, if you don't have this, you're going to have issues. Because if the technology group or the accounting group try to push this on the business and you don't have senior leadership on board with it, you're going to be pushing a rope, quite frankly. It's not going to be successful. So that's the challenge that we've dealt with. We now have them on board, and things are moving much, much faster. Victor, you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Correct. So when I first started out, I was a field level guy working at the Pleasanton location that we have. I came into it as a voluntold type project. And so it made sense for us to start our implementation at the location that I was already at, because I could hands-on help everybody that was at that location. Any kind of troubleshooting, support, it all came through me. So I also had a very good understanding of the business process itself because I came from the business directly. So I was able to map out what we were doing originally and kind of cater the system to what we needed. So from there, we had everything in place for one cement location. We rolled it out to the next, so on, so on. We had 3 locations that came on board with it, and then we opened up another one later on down the road, and it made things just so much easier because we were able to focus on those specific points early on. So one thing that got us kind of held up in the beginning, and this was probably around 2015 when we got into it, on our pilot test group, we started out with iPads. And at that time, iPads and the iOS devices, they were not communicating very well with FieldFX, and it was hard trying to sync stuff. Some of the pages were off. And it made life a little difficult because we were trying to get that buy-in from our end users, and because it was not working, they were just ready to quit. They're like, no, we're done with it. So I highly suggest doing a little bit of research with your devices and what you're going to use, because you don't want that to be a problem that comes up. And we all know that these guys are going to be very quick to just turn anything down because it doesn't work. Whatever they'll try anything to try to say they want to keep their process. So.
Yeah, and one thing that I do want to touch on, and Victor did touch on it briefly, but breaking up the implementation into phases and identifying goals is something that was crucial. With Victor being in Pleasanton, it was essentially the next logical step for us to roll it out in Pleasanton because he was right there. He could focus on the implementation and making sure that it actually went off smoothly. Having milestones is going to be very important for you to show progress to the business. Had we taken an approach of, okay, we're going to roll it out across all of cementing, I can only imagine the headaches that would have been involved with trying to coordinate all of these resources across all of these locations, and then senior leadership coming back and saying, hey, why aren't we making any progress? So definitely chunk it up into small bites and focus on one specific area so that you can hit those milestones and adhere to your schedule and your timelines.
Also, I kind of want to add, I had mentioned that I was kind of voluntold for the project. If you have a dedicated team member that can really put time and effort into what they're doing, and make sure that you can get these processes put into the system, that way nobody has anything negative to say about it. Then also you have a cheerleader in the background that's just basically keeping the project moving, like Sean mentioned on that timeline. So huge, huge pieces there.
Yeah, making sure that you have the staff available for this. This is something that Liquid Frameworks is actually very good about doing. They want to try and convey, look, this is not something where you can just come into it part-time and think that you're just going to scratch the surface and people are going to chip away at it. You need to really commit resources to the project. So in the statement of work, it actually highlights you've got to have 50% of an accountant's time or 70% of an ops guy's time, whatever it may be. Don't hold me to those percentages, but they highlight what you need for the implementation. And this is an area that we did struggle with a little bit on the Wireline side because they didn't truly understand what that meant. They thought, okay, well, we have a controller and she has a full-time job, but 70% of her time, okay, she can do it, type of a thing. Really, really stress, you have to make sure that you have these resources available to be successful at an implementation like this. And as I look around the room and think about some of the guys at NetSuite, this is probably not much different from what you see on ERP systems. So probably preaching to the choir on that.
So the benefits of e-ticketing and what we're getting out of the system and how we are dividing our whole business units up within the system. So just to give on the e-ticketing process, you probably heard it all day long, but for us, we start at the quote level. So we create a quote and we're on a one-to-one, so we have a quote, a job, ticket, prepare the quote, get it sent out, get it approved. We use the approval process, we send it to a different status. If we won the quote, that's great. We can push it out to a job. All the information carries. If we lose a quote, we're actually able to track now why we lost it. We can put reasons in there. We can go back and create versions of quotes, track how many versions we're doing for each customer. The ticket's loaded onto a field technician's device. They're able to add, take off, change quantities of whatever material it is that they're charging for, and get it stamped and signed out on location by the company man. So when they do that, they sync back up, upload their information, back office, they're able to start invoicing and approving almost the same day that they got it submitted. So our approval process, as long as they approve it the same day, we can actually begin the invoicing process. So down to the meat and potatoes of what we're here to talk about is how we split our business up. We're getting Wireline involved currently. Our cementing division is inside of the system. They've been running full throttle since 2017, January. The Wireline division, as we mentioned, there are those things that you need to take care of, having the people in place to help push the project along. But inside of the system, how we do it is we leverage a bunch of different tools, most importantly, role hierarchy and public groups. So role hierarchy is going to be your org chart for your system, and this gives us the lay of the land, tells us this employee belongs in this business unit, this employee belongs in this business unit, and basically Game of Thrones type things, which house do you belong to? So from there, we can create public groups. We could say, okay, this guy's in the Wireline division, so he's part of the Wireline company public group. This guy's in cementing, he's part of the cementing public group. And through that, we're able to use their sharing rules to push jobs specifically for those divisions to that employee. And he will now be able to see the other side. So, profiles being the next biggest thing, this is going to be the lay of the land. So you're going to get your layout from here. This is what they're going to be able to see based off of their role within the organization. And it also allows permissions to certain record types. So if our business unit for cementing has an equipment record type that the guys are able to see, but our Wireline division doesn't, we can use profiles to kind of pinpoint what you're looking at. Permission sets goes on top of profiles, so this is going to be like another layer of security on top of it. So now you're able to see these things because of your profile, but with permission sets now, you can edit it. We're going to give you that permission on top. And then last but not least, we have the business unit field, which is a custom field on the user record itself. It's a pick list, which basically limits us to 2 values right now, which is our business units inside of the system, Crest and CDK, our Wireline and our cementing. So straight out the gate, we're saying this user belongs to this business unit, And every record that they touch from then on inside of the system is associated to that business unit through workflow rules. So it takes a look at that user record and says, OK, copy this business unit to each and every one of those records. And because of that, we can use those sharing rules to filter out this business unit on each record and share it. So what does that look like on a user record? First and foremost, we have to assign their role. This is going to work towards their hierarchy, puts them into their house. Then the next step would be we assign their profile, give them the lay of the land, what are they going to look at, what record types can they see. Then we want to give them the business unit distinction. So they are either CDK, Crest, Wireline, cementing, whatever division they belong to, each record they touch after that is going to carry this value specifically. And then last, we have the extra security with the permission sets. So at this point, we can say, all right, you're the sales manager, so now you can edit price books. So the role hierarchy in detail, what does that look like for us? Right now, we have a Wireline service. We have a cementing service. We go by regions in the Wireline division. So we have our East region. We have our West region. Managers, dispatchers for each location, field agents. Then we go down to cementing. And cementing is kind of the same setup. So this is leaving a lot of room for growth. If we have another location open, we can simply just put them into the role hierarchy where they belong within the division. Or if we, like Sean mentioned, we do a lot of acquisitions. So if we brought on another company, easily we could just put a new business unit into the hierarchy and start assigning roles within that business unit. So public groups, they can go multiple ways. They can go horizontally or vertically. And what I mean by that is if you want to create a public group with all managers across the board from every company, you can go horizontally like that. Or vertically, if you want to just keep it at one business unit and say everybody within this business unit is part of this group, you can do that also. So what that means is, from this example, we have all of our employees in one big old bucket, and now we want to put them into the cementing division. So all of these employees are now cementing employees. And we're going to share all our jobs with these cementing employees that fall into the cementing category. So from here, we can divide it by region. So we have north, south, east, west. All of those employees are getting information shared to them specific to their location because of their public group. Take it a step farther, and now we want to send out information only to managers, but still within the cementing division. We can do that through the sharing rules that we established on the user record. And so in the case that we do acquire another business, we can simply call it the whatever new business unit it is. And it would fall in line to the same rules. So we have the region for that business location, and then we can still manage the public group for managers across those businesses. So an example of why we would want to use this is we use a lot of triggers on the back office for status workflows. And if a guy on location finishes up a job, he marks it as complete, he's got a signature, he's got a stamp, syncs it back up. Now, any notes that he has for that job, including his attachments, we keep job logs within the system. Those get emailed directly to managers so they can know exactly what was left on location and how the job went itself, whether there was any issues. So profiles and permission sets. Like I mentioned earlier, profiles is going to give you the lay of the land, the record types that you have available to you, what you're able to see, pretty much. And they come with some basic permissions themselves, so you can say, I want them to be able to read these things, but not necessarily edit them. So standard will give job edits, create tickets. So based off of the profile, they can do that stuff for those record types. But now if I want to take it a step farther and I have like I mentioned earlier, a sales manager, we don't want everybody going in manipulating the price books. So we're going to add a layer of security to him and say, you have the ability now to go into the price books and edit the price, change percentage on discounts. And that's going to be an extra layer on top of what you can already do. So with those together, he's able to do everything that he needs to get those price books up to date. On that same note, though, the flexibility of permission sets, you can take away permissions just as easily. So there's no need to go and redirect everybody's profile and do all this crazy stuff to one profile. You just add those layers of complexity to your permissions. So all of this together, what does it look like for reporting purposes? That's what everybody's about. This is the dessert part of what we did to make it happen. So from our public groups and our sharing settings, we're able to now see, from a location manager standpoint, only information to their specific location. So if we want to run reports for our Pleasanton office, we can do that. As well as monthly revenue reports. Well, actually, so the business unit managers, like I mentioned, if we're going horizontally across the board, they'll be able to see all locations, job counts, and revenue, and also anything pertaining to that business unit. So from the executive manager standpoint, they can have access to everything that we have within our system. And what I mean access is reporting to see their numbers, their job totals, their revenue, anything pertaining to what would help them make decisions. So another piece to this, and why we divide everything up the way we do in the sharing rules and settings, is that we are using the schedule and dispatch piece currently within our org, and to be able to keep certain views out of certain people's schedule and dispatch module, we set it up to where they can only see their business unit. So they're able to see their employees, if they're available, what kind of records are we going to show them for those employees? Do they have certifications? Equipment, whether the equipment is down, they can use it. We can edit the colors based on availability. And also it's cloud-based. So a lot of our upper management, they want to be able to see what's going on in real time. We've heard crazy solutions as far as that goes. Some people even wanted to put cameras so they can see their whiteboard currently. But from this, you absolutely can see everything from anywhere you want. And then reporting on all the data captured. So now we know exactly who was out on location, what equipment was out there on location, when did the job start, when did it finish. All of that's reportable. And all of this is because we distinguish the two business units. We put user roles, permissions, profiles, and said, here, you can see this, and you can see this, and now everybody gets to live within their own business unit. If you guys have any questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned that when you started out to use the iPad, and the iPad didn't really work so well. Why wouldn't you have known that the iPad or the specs on the iPad wouldn't be the right thing for you to go through?
At that point, everything did match up to specs when we first initially got into it. So we went into it kind of half-heartedly. We purchased maybe 5 iPads to roll out to a test group. And then when it started coming back that they were not able to perform to the full specs, that's when we decided these guys already have laptops. We're going to go ahead and just let them use their laptops for what they're doing.
Yeah, one thing I
Lack of memory or RAM memory versus?
No, actually, one of the issues that we ran into, or kind of the tipping point, was we had these iPads out in the field, and they were using them. Apple came out with an update that caused, there was some sort of sync or communication issues.
It was
after
a new version of iOS.
Yeah, it was a new iOS version that we ran into. And so for us, as we're rolling out this new system, we were trying to avoid any sort of potential issues or roadblocks. And like Victor said, all of the engineers and FSSs already had laptops. And so it just made sense for us to go ahead and use that for the time being, instead of trying to roll out a mobile device that Apple could update and cause issues. So that's kind of the approach that we took.
For us, personally, from what I've experienced, there hasn't been a whole lot of reluctance to it. They are willing to stamp and sign it. Yeah, and then our guys on the back end will put that into the computer and sync it back up. So we haven't experienced any kind of pushback on it yet, but there was some issues where maybe we didn't have that stamp on a particular page of the ticket. So they wanted to see it at all levels to where they can verify that this was exactly what they were doing.
But from the stamp side, are you printing your fill work ticket and getting them to stamp it, or is there a way to address getting a stamp through some sort of a tablet?
So if you're using a mobile device, it's very easy to just take a picture of even just a regular stamped piece of paper, which is what we initially kind of led into. But we started from there, printing out the ticket, handing it over, and we let them keep that copy as long as we have the image of the stamp to put into our system.
Okay.
Just to add to that,
Tablet versus a computer.
Yeah.
So are you guys still on a computer or using a tablet?
We're still using
We're
computers.
computers.
Yep.
are you printing out the fill?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Just to add to that really quickly from the FieldFX perspective, we do have the ability to superimpose stamps right onto the field ticket offline away from the internet in the field.
You mentioned at the beginning the commitment is required from day one, takeoff.
Right.
How many full-time people do you have in your company that are dedicated to FieldFX, working with FieldFX, compared to the size of your company?
Ooh.
So that's him.
Yeah. Sagan mentioned Guru. That's why.
Yeah.
It is just you that does the admin, the developing, the forms, the accounting, the change sets, everything.
Pretty much, yes.
That's just you. And how big's your company?
What do you say?
How big is our company?
Well, we have 2,000 employees total. If you look at wireline and cementing, those divisions have an aggregate of probably 650, 700 employees, roughly. Now, we don't have near that many licenses of FieldFX. What are we at now?
130 currently.
Yeah, 130 current licenses.
Right,
That's
'cause
spread across both
we work in
divisions.
the same product lines, work for X-Pro well flow management. We work in 55 countries around the world, thousands of employees, hundreds of licenses, and yes, there is only me. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I'm not the only person out there. So when we have a meeting, that we can go together and we can stand together and I can say, no, we need some more people.
It feels good knowing there's others out there.
Yeah.